So hi everybody, my name is Jordan Barry and I'm the Chief People Officer of MIB. And I've been invited along by Hugo and Matt to talk to you for just 5 minutes today about the thing that I'm most passionate about, the C word, culture. And actually, if we look as far back as the late 1990s, we had people like Peter Drucker writing books about culture, eating strategy for breakfast. At the same time, if you look at any of the latest thought leadership from companies like Gartner or any of the stats, organizations who actively invest in their people and culture tend to outperform their competitors by 30%. And I guess the question that I always find myself coming back to as a CPO is, if we take as read that boards, CEOs and executive committee members like you and I, who genuinely do understand the key ingredients of great culture, then why do so few of us and why do so few organisations actually successfully manage to create it? If you then overlay the additional complexity of the change in appetite and the change in expectation of the next generation of leaders, the millennials and the Gen Zs, who, let's face it, are more diverse and more connected than ever, then our role as senior HR leaders has never been more critical in affecting lasting cultural change. Which, let's face it, for me, also goes hand in hand with the need for our boards and CEOs and peers around the top table to really get behind us as CPOs and provide the requisite investment, sponsorship and support for us to do our thing and have clout and genuine influence around the top table. And I had the privilege of, when I was leaving Shell, working for a fantastic leader, a guy called Ian Muir, who, as an aside, is an award-winning author since retiring. So if you haven't got his book, he wrote this wonderful book called A Tone from the Top, which is a brilliant read, and it's all about culture. I remember him saying to me, Jordan, if you really want to get a measure of how genuine an organisation's commitment to its people and culture is, then first and foremost, look for two things. Number one, assess the calibre and quality of the CPO that they've hired. And then number two, look at how high up the food chain that role sits, i.e. if it's not sat around the top table as a minimum as an executive committee member, then in all likelihood, that organisation is probably not invested in its people and culture. And what I love about the current period of time is that the more progressive organisations, and certainly the ones that you and I would look up to, increasingly what we're seeing is that CHROs are also now being appointed to the board. And I think that's really exciting. I think that's absolutely right. Because without a people agenda, without culture, what is an organisation really? But if the pandemic has taught us nothing more, it's that strong HR, despite some of the myths that some of our peers have, is much more than a necessary evil. It's actually a critical driver of an organisation's success. But at the same time, if I'm being completely candid, if we as HR leaders want to be taken seriously and have clout and influence, as I was talking about before around the top table, then we really need to stop talking about policy and process and start contributing beyond our functional specialism of HR. Because I was really surprised to read in a recent survey of the FTSE 250, only 20% of CEOs are genuinely excited and enamoured by, one, the CPO that they have, and two, by the quality and calibre of people agenda that they're driving. Food for thought. As an aside, did any of you see last year's article by Adriana Huffington in the Harvard Business Review, which was entitled How CHROs Have Met Their Moment? And I loved this article because it was all about the things that we've really been grappling and the value that we've had to add during the pandemic. And she wrote, the quote was, and I'm going to read it for you because I want to get it right, CEOs are leaning on their CPOs to ensure their workforces are feeling supported because they know the future success and, in many cases, their survival or the survival of their organisations depends on it. And let's face it, given business is at one of its most critical inflection points of all times, and the last genuine thought leadership that came out to us as HR people was probably Ulrich, which we all know how long ago that was. I genuinely believe that right now, in this moment, you and I, as senior HR leaders, have probably one of the most amazing opportunities that we will ever have in our career to really genuinely rethink the role, the value, and the purpose of HR for every employee in every organisation, for the benefit of the next generation of talent who, let's face it, really deserve the opportunity to work in a fantastic organisation with a fantastic culture and have the privilege of being part of something special. And you and I all know, as CHROs and senior HR people, that the rare occasions that we get to work in organisations that really inspire us, that's the best feeling in the world. So I'd really like to hear from you, and I'd really like to connect with you, because I would like to start a movement about how we, as CHROs, redefine our role and value in organisations and stand side by side to make that a reality. So that's me over and out. That's my 5 minutes up. And if you do want to hear about any of the stuff, the award-winning culture stuff that me and my team have been doing at MIB over the last 2 years and driving, feel free to link in with me. It would be a real pleasure to connect. All of our content and all of the stuff and the great stories about the last 2 years at MIB are on there. So over and out from me, and thank you again for the opportunity to come along and talk to you today.